News, traffic, and weather. Here's Jerry Agar, News Talk 1010.
Have you seen those ads on television where these people, sometimes it's a couple, sometimes it's an individual, sitting there with their financial advisor, and it's kind of like, who's really benefiting here? This is my family's future, and they're really actually putting it in the face of the bad financial advisor, and then, of course, here's who you should hire. And I look at those and I think, it's easy to do in a commercial because it's just a bunch of actors. But actually sitting in front of somebody, telling them, you're just not doing the job for me, and this is ridiculous, and we're done with you, is actually easier to say than it is to do. Breaking up is hard to do, whether it's personal relationships or business relationships often. Joining me now, CTV Chief Financial Commentator Pattie Lovett-Reid, on how to break up, which Pattie and I have not done.
It's not about you. It's all about me. I'm sorry. You know, Jerry, it is. I think you just hit it right on the head. It is very difficult to sit down in front of someone and say, I don't think you're giving me what I need and what I want. And sure, emotionally it's hard to do, but there are similarities when it comes to your finances. There's the money element. It's personal. It can be complicated. And I have to tell you, I get a lot of press releases coming my way. And then I saw this one that said 50 ways to leave your, and I was just expecting lover, and I wasn't sure what it was. 50 ways to break up with your advisor. It was a joke, tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is Hennick Wealth Management did come out with cards that they say, just send them a card and say, it's me, it's not you. Everything's can't be about you. Or say, fare thee well, like I'm moving on. I think anyone who breaks up with a card probably should move on anyway, but that's not the point. The point is, it is tough to do. And in some cases, you just have to do it.
Well, the end of this one message in the card, I'm pulling out now and taking my money to, it's not about me, it's about you.
Yeah, exactly. But in fairness to Hennick Wealth Management, and you can download their cards, by the way, off their website. They are copyright free if you choose to. There are signs that your advisor is just not that into you. And sometimes it's as simple or basic as they only call you once a year. Or they say you don't need a financial plan at all. And we've all had someone recommend something for our portfolio that even intuitively we know is in their best interest, not ours.
Your advisor says you don't need a financial plan. Well, in that case, I'd say, well, then what am I doing here?
But they'd say, but you need an advisor, but you don't need just the plan. And the thing is, I am a certified financial planner. Okay. I can actually do the job, but I have someone managing our money. I want a second set of eyes. I want to be able to sit down and discuss with them what they're doing. And sometimes I want them to tweak according to what's going on, what we've talked about, to my risk tolerance. I may not have time to do it. So I have nothing against advisors, but I think you really need to set out the parameters to say, here's what I'm willing to let you do, but here's where I don't want you to go. And you better be able to tell me my annual rate of return as well.
Pattie Lovett-Reid is with me, CTV Chief Financial Commentator. It's hard to break up with your financial advisor as it is in any other circumstances. The reasons that people will give. Your advisor doesn't explain investments in a language you understand. That's not just financial advisors. Your mechanic, your doctor, anybody you're dealing with. The best people know how to talk to non-professionals.
You're absolutely right about that, because are they trying to impress you with what they know as opposed to what they could be sharing with you? And a classic example of this, I sat down and asked our youngest son to talk. He's in infrastructure, and I said, tell me about your job. Tell me what you do. What's the art of the deal here so that I can really understand it? And I'm in business. And at the end of it, I looked at him and I said, I honestly didn't understand a word that you just said. And I don't know if it's because you don't know how else to explain it, or you just want me to know how smart you are. I already know you're smart, so break it down. And I think that goes for so many elements in our life, and I agree with you there. The other side of it, too, there was another report that came out this morning. It was from Natixis, say that, investment managers, and they said, given the lackluster returns that we've seen in the Canadian market in 2017, investors are worried and advisors are concerned that high levels of market volatility, interest rate hikes, and maybe asset bubbles could threaten returns in 2018. And what can sometimes happen is that as a customer, as a client, I start to get emotional, and maybe that's the reason I start to move on. You can't really blame your advisor for what's going on in the market. You can blame your advisor for maybe not stick handling or communicating with you to help you get through the ups and downs.
Now, if I said to a financial advisor, you touched on the annual return, they should be able, if I said to my advisor, what's my annual return been over the last calendar month, they should be able to say 6.32%. Like, they should know exactly what it is. And if I said, and how does that compare to the Canadian market in general, should they have that number right away as well?
Sure. It's really easy to figure out how the TSX has performed. People often will make a benchmark comparison. They'll say, this stock has performed this well, and here's how the TSX has performed during the same period. But I think more importantly, when you sit down with your advisor, you have to establish a rate of return that you hope to achieve in that portfolio, regardless of what's going on the market. There will be some who have already accumulated wealth and they're into wealth preservation. They're going to tell their advisor, I don't want to hit it out of the park. I don't need an 8, 9, 10% return. I want a balanced, maybe conservative portfolio that gets me 4% or 5%. Because that's all the risks I want to take on. So it's about establishing the types of returns you hope to get in your portfolio and the benchmarks that you're going to measure it against.
All right. Now, you're a professional, but but for anybody, like when you went looking, Patty, for that person who's going to help you, even though you are a professional, how did you decide who to go with?
You know what? Often I will look for recommendations from people that I respect and that I trust. I will always get a second opinion. And sometimes it's a matter of feel. I mean, they could be highly qualified, highly competent, and yet we don't gel. We just don't connect on a level that I'm comfortable with. And that's okay. That, too, is a reason to move on.
Well, that works also in so many other areas of your life. Like when I've had some unfortunate conflicts with mechanics over the years. And I had one who the first thing I ever had to do here in Toronto, I quite frankly think the person ripped me off, and I told him that to his face. But now I'm working with, I'm actually happy to go over there. They'll help me out on a Saturday morning. I'll show up with coffee and donuts sometimes.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful thing. And you know what? I feel the same way about my hairdresser. You know, I go time after time after time, and I like the cut, and guess what? The next one, not so great. It's not easy to say, hey, this isn't working for me. But you do have to, in many regards, in many ways, be your own advocate. And, you know, it doesn't hurt to be, kind of nice along the way as well. Just because you're breaking up with someone doesn't mean you have to be mean. And there's so many other words I could use to describe it, but you know what I'm saying.
But if you, as in personal relationships, if it's time to break up with the professional financial advisor, then sooner the better, I guess.
Yeah, the sooner the better. And it's never easy, and it's always complicated because there is a whole transfer process. You have to make sure that you don't have to liquidate your assets to do it. In many cases, you don't. They could be transferred what we call in kind, but you need to understand the parameters. And by the way, before you just make that decision to say, I'm moving on in terms of my advisor, maybe give them a chance to sit down and say, here's what's working for me, but here's what's not. Is there a way we can come to terms? And there is the other side of that coin, by the way. They may decide to fire you, and that's happened as well.
Okay. Pattie Lovett-Reid, CTV Chief Financial Commentator. Thanks.